My name is Jennifer Schull, and I would like to share with you my research project, Impact of Student Choice on Reading Motivation. Over the past several years, reading instruction in many classrooms has focused on preparing for standardized testing. Fewer books of student interest are being purchased. Instead, funds are being used for test prep materials and core reading programs. Many students read only for academic purposes and do not read for enjoyment. The term readicide is described as the love of reading being killed by many of the teaching practices of today. The term illiterates describes students who can read but won't. Several factors can also negatively affect the reading motivation of the struggling reader. Many struggling readers spend a majority of reading instruction on isolated skills in workbook pages, thus giving them fewer opportunities to actually read books of choice. Students who read less can sometimes experience slower fluency rates. Although many students enjoy Accelerated Reader, it can have a negative impact on the struggling reader. Color-coding books with reading levels and posting points often has a negative effect on the struggling reader. Many of the struggling readers have fewer opportunities to read books. Therefore, they are unable to accumulate as many points and often miss out on reward opportunities. Students who read more often academically outperform students who don't read as often. Students must be motivated and actively engaged in reading to become better readers. Therefore, it is essential to discover factors that motivate students to participate in voluntary independent reading. The purpose of this study was to identify factors that motivate students to participate in voluntary independent reading. The study investigated the impact of student choice on reading motivation and attitude. 3 sub-questions assisted with the main research focus. What factors contributed to a decrease in students' reading motivation? What additional components of reading instruction were provided for the students? And how did students feel about each additional component of reading instruction? A qualitative action research design was utilized in this study. Qualitative research seeks to explore and understand a central phenomenon. Action research is often used by educators to improve teaching practices. In this study, the central phenomenon was reading motivation with the purpose of improving reading instruction within the classroom. The qualitative action research study took place in a second-grade classroom of a Title I school in southeastern United States. Because of these common characteristics, a homogeneous sampling was used. 6 focus students were chosen from the 18 students. The focus students represented struggling readers. The struggling readers were identified by standardized test scores from the beginning of the school year. It should be noted that 4 of the 6 struggling readers had ADD and ADHD characteristics. 2 of these students received medication therapy. Data was collected using short one-on-one interviews, teacher-student conferences, and observations recorded in a field journal. After IRB approval, parental and student consent forms were collected from the participants. After all necessary forms were collected, initial interviews were conducted to determine what students liked most about reading, what they liked least about reading, how they felt about reading at school, and how they felt about reading at home. After initial interviews were conducted, all students began making reading choices and participating in independent reading for 30 to 45 minutes daily. During this time, students also participated in conferences with the researcher and participated in book clubs. Observations by the researcher were also recorded in a field journal. This study took place for 6 weeks. At the end, students participated in a final interview to determine if any changes in reading motivation had occurred. Coding and triangulation of data was utilized to analyze results and determine common themes and patterns. 3 sub-questions assisted with the main research focus in analyzing the results. Question number 1, what factors contributed to a decrease in reading motivation? During the interviews, 10 of 18 students claimed they did not like reading books with hard words. Some students also claimed they did not have many books at home. During several observations, it was noted that students were less engaged during repeated readings of decodable text associated with the basal reading series. However, students seemed to enjoy repeated readings of books they had selected themselves. Students were also less engaged when completing worksheets and workbook pages. Question number 2. What additional components of reading instruction were provided for the students? Additional components included more choice of reading material in the classroom, a choice of read to self or read to someone, choice of reading partners, choice of where to read. Students' favorite places included pillows and the rocking chair. A choice of book clubs. Book clubs are small groups formed by interest, not reading ability. And Epic. Epic is free for teachers. It is a website that offers thousands of books for students to select from. This is a great option if space and funds are limited. Students were already participating in the Accelerated Reader program. Question number 3. How did students feel about each additional component of reading instruction? 3 themes developed that assisted with the results of this sub-question. Theme 1 was student choice. Student choice proved to be a very important factor in assisting with reading motivation. Choosing their own reading material was a very important factor in reading motivation in this study. Using Epic was the number 1 choice of all factors in reading motivation. Most students reported they liked having so many books from which to choose and read. 2 other very important factors in this study were choosing who to read with and choosing where in the room to read. Another theme that developed was reading volume. Reading volume increased significantly. According to the Epic website, students read just over 500 books collectively during the 6-week study. This did not include books that were read for Accelerated Reader and other purposes. Theme 3 was reading behavior. During the study, students' reading stamina improved. Students enjoyed trying new genres of books and making recommendations to friends. Students became aware of fluency and accuracy improvement as they recorded this in their data journals. Students also began taking risks with attempting to pronounce unknown words. The 6 focused students of struggling readers were still not able to stay engaged every day for the entire 30 to 45 minutes. However, their stamina still improved. Risk-taking, fluency, and accuracy also improved, just not as fast as some of the other students. In her book, The Book Whisperer, Donna Lynn Miller states, "Since making independent reading the core of the reading program in my classroom, I have witnessed an increase in student achievement as well as a sharp increase in student motivation and engagement. Even if traditional instruction were able to provide equivalent gains, the improvement in students' attitudes toward reading would be cause enough to devote substantial time to independent reading." In order for students to become better readers, they must read and read a lot. Students must be motivated to read independently. In order to increase the volume of reading, the following is a list of implications and recommendations to increase reading motivation in students. Limit the number of worksheets, workbooks, and isolated skills instruction. Spend more time actively engaged in reading text. Allow students more choice of reading material, reading alone or with someone, who to read with, and where to read in the classroom. Also provide time for student discourse and collaboration on reading materials selected. Provide a wide variety of reading materials. Assist students with finding books that are an appropriate text level. Provide time for all students to read many books of choice. And use book clubs for skills and comprehension instruction during small groups. This qualitative action research study was designed to determine the impact of choice on student reading motivation. The study was conducted with a small sample population of only 18 students in an early childhood classroom. The findings were consistent with previous research studies on reading motivation. However, it is recommended that future research be conducted with a larger sample population and with upper elementary students. Because students began to notice an increase in their own reading fluency and accuracy, future research recommendations could include quantitative studies to determine the impact of student choice on reading, fluency, accuracy, and comprehension.